Well, hello, Davey.
Good evening, Peter. Well, is it evening? Is it still morning time?
Oh, I don't know what's going on.
It's 24 degrees in Dundee. It's like it's the middle of the day.
Aye, keep going. It's about 4 degrees here in Shetland. In fact, I believe there's a scratching sound at the window, and I think it's possibly a polar bear. Just landed off a glacier or something like that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there. Welcome to Tartan Tunes. Fantastic to have you. I've sussed what was happening there. I was trying to use 4G and 2 devices next to each other, and it didn't like it. So there we go. So I don't know if you heard that there, but Grace has just shouted that she's waiting to go to the bathroom. So it's one of these nights. So here we go. Anyway, fantastic. Thanks for joining us, folks. Keep the comments coming in. See loads of comments coming in. It's always wonderful. We love to know where you are, where you're watching from. We've got 2 amazing guests for you tonight. We've got Neil Sutcliffe in the first half, and we've got John Goldie guitar in the second half. So from if you
Peter, I can't hear what you're saying. It's a bit choppy. Give me 2 seconds. Just me. 2 seconds. Put it back on. Well, while we're waiting for Peter to go off and come back on again, we'll play a track and we'll talk about it afterwards. Here he comes.
Am I back now?
Yes. Don't touch anything again.
I don't. Karen's moved the little thing that picks up reception. Sorry about this, folks. I'm up in Yale. I'm at my mother and father-in-law's house tonight because my house isn't quite ready yet, but I'm getting there. Can you remind me what the tunes were there? The first one's the tune I wrote for your wedding. Happy anniversary.
Thank you. That's what I was getting to. Blue Bonnets.
And the Blue Bonnets are the border. Yeah, great tune.
Oh, nice. Alex in Portugal.
So fantastic. Yeah, so we've got two brilliant guests coming on for you tonight. You're in a heat wave. I'm not in a heat wave. And we'll take it from there and see how we go on. Well, there's sunny Stornoway. So it's not just the Isles then, everywhere. It's just up here then. There we go. Rosanna says she loved the scenery as well. Well, you wouldn't have seen that today because it's thick fog. So not that I'm downing the place today, but it's not great. Right. So I was up in Lunch this afternoon at the spaceport doing a podcast. And you wouldn't have been launching any rockets today, that's for sure.
You would be launching anything. No mean rockets.
Not a thing. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen out there, thank you for joining us. Please remember and hit the share button for us and share the show about. It's going to be great. There's lots of folk liked last week's show and really enjoyed it, and we've had a lot of messages in, so thanks for that. And we're going to have a great show tonight as well. Davey, tell us about our first guest.
So, this young man, I'm going to say young man because I think he's younger than me, so that's fine. Young man came to my attention in what would refer to as an indie film.
An indie film?
Called The Dirt Road to Lafayette.
Well pronounced. Wow, you've been doing your homework again, haven't you?
Which I can truly say that I've watched about 3 times since seeing it the first time I watched it. Brilliant film. And I went looking to kind of find out a bit more about him and all that sort of stuff. And do you know how sometimes in these films they get really good actors to pretend to play instruments? Yes. And they just kind of, we'll dub it over with, like that Shetland guy like Peter Wood, we'll dub him over instead and it'll be fine. Well,
I always get dubbed over.
Well, that's true. Actually, you've probably been dubbed over by Neil, to be fair. So that's what you kind of expect. But no, Neil is a graduate of the Conservatoire in classical accordion. None of this trad rubbish. Classical accordion.
Okay.
And it was just last year he graduated, so he had his graduation this year, probably the big graduation. And yeah.
Does that mean he can read music and all that kind of stuff?
He can probably read it backwards. This is the type of guy that could probably play Flight of the Bumblebee on the accordion.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So what we're going to do, he's kindly given us the trailer to Dirt Road to Lafayette because it is a BBC programme, so hopefully we won't be taken off air for this. So let's have a quick look at that and then we'll bring him on and chat a bit about it. Here is the trailer to Dirt Road to Lafayette.
Dad, what's up? There's no buses until tomorrow, that's what's up.
You like the music?
Yeah.
You play, boy? You play Cajun?
You don't know what you're talking about.
You are gonna have to come do the gig now, Margot.
Sarah tell you something about a gig? Lafayette?
We've got to go. We've got a bus to catch and have to get back to the hotel.
I'm going to have to call Uncle John.
So how come you ended up in Allentown, Mississippi? One for the storybook, huh? We'll be home around midnight, son. Hey, don't burn the house down.
Have a good time. Louisiana.
Where you come from, boy?
The bus station.
Hello, Neil.
Brilliant.
How's it going?
Hi there, Peter and Dave. How you doing?
Doing
Good,
well.
how are you?
Doing well.
I'm great, yeah. A beautiful sunny day here in Glasgow as well. Although I have to say, I mean, I'm quite pale skinned, so I kept out of it mostly.
I should have.
I'm just going to go and get my scarf and my parka.
Is that your heart? Is that your heart scarf? Is it, Peter?
Yeah, well, it's going to come in useful for something, isn't it?
Neil, it's great having you on tonight. And yeah, I'm going to open it up. How did you manage to land that gig?
Well, that was a strange one. It's always funny seeing bits of the film because it happened such a long time ago now. It was about 7 years ago when
Wow.
I was only 15 and just turned 16 when we were filming.
Mhm.
So it was back. I didn't really have any acting experience before then, apart from the odd musical theatre production in schools. But it was a funny thing. It was my neighbour over the wall. Was a cellist in Scottish opera and had been forwarded an email from a friend saying, you know, this film was looking for accordion players in Scotland who could maybe do a bit of acting to come along in audition for. And I kind of thought, it sounds fun, sounds interesting. And I went along, and over a few months I did a series of sort of auditions and workshops where I met the director and spent a lot of time with the writer, James Kelman, as well.
Mhm.
And eventually they said, you've got the part. And
Fantastic.
I got to go over to Louisiana and discover this amazing music scene over there, which I didn't really know much about. My dad plays a wee bit of Cajun and Zydeco stuff, so I'd heard a little bit growing up, but it was incredible just to be over there and meet some of the musicians.
Yeah, so you were playing, obviously then you were playing accordion before this then, Neil?
Yes, I mean, back then I think actually my main instrument was the piano, but I was already playing the box. I was sort of mostly self-taught. My dad taught me a bit, and I had a few lessons for a while, but I was mostly playing trad stuff and experimenting with bits of jazz. You know, a wee bit of mucking about on the box, but it was a real sort of new world, the Cajun Zydeco stuff for me to discover. It was funny because I didn't quite understand the music until I got over there. I remember sitting in my living room in Stirling, you know, listening to the sort of, you know, the soundtrack and sort of trying to get into it and learning the notes and everything, but not quite getting the groove of it.
Yeah.
And it was only when I saw the dancing and, you know, saw it played live at the festival, the Festival International de Louisiane, which is in Lafayette, where we did some of the filming. It was only there.
I'm glad you said that and not me.
I was thinking the same thing. So yeah. Have you ever heard of a band called Boogaloosa?
Boogaloosa? No, I haven't.
So Boogaloosa are a Cajun Zydeco band from Dundee.
Oh, great!
But they've been going since the 80s.
Oh, wow!
So have a look into them, and it's very much the style that the film brings forward. We had fiddle player Kevin Finlay on the show quite early on, about a year ago now. And
that's great.
Things like that. So have a look into them because it's the exact same style, and they bring some of this, the traditional stuff.
The only band I knew that were around that my dad knew when he was getting into this stuff were the Deaf Height Cajun Aces. Who were
Now there's a name.
I think they possibly were even up at a Shetland Folk Festival at one point in time. I think.
Oh wow, yeah.
So after that, you're saying that was 7 years ago. You're saying so
about 7 years ago. I think
2015.
I think it was 2015.
Yeah. So what happened after that?
Well, it's funny because the film was, I think, felt like a wee bit of a bubble in my life. I mean, I went back to school and did my did my hires or my advanced hires. I don't know, the next year, and it was going back to being a musician. I haven't done any filming or any sort of high profile acting things since then. Since then, I've gone down more the storytelling route. I do a lot of work now with storytellers, but yeah, I just went back to being a musician and sort of came out of school and went straight into the RCS. And it was after the film that I started to get into the classical accordion. I was at the juniors at the RCS in Glasgow, doing first study classical piano, and I was enjoying it. But somebody, in fact, Ryan Corbett, who I'm sure you'll maybe know or heard of, he was there at the same time as me, and he was getting lessons from Georgie, who was my teacher at RCS, and he said, why don't you go along? He knew I played a bit of box. Why don't you go along and get some second study lessons from Georgie? And I went along and really loved Georgie as a teacher, found him very inspiring, and this whole world of the classical accordion sort of opened up. And I was,
Georgie must be one of the few classical teachers in the universities, etc., in Scotland. Is that true?
Well, the scene's kind of built around him, to be honest. He's certainly the only person I know of teaching in like higher education in Scotland. It's all kind of based around, and to be honest, it's still him that's sort of funneling into that as well. He teaches in secondary schools as well, and like the Gaelic School in Glasgow and St Mary's, and there aren't many other folk actually teaching the classical accordion. So
because we had Ian Lothian on 2 or 3 months ago.
I saw that actually.
Right, and of course Ian talked about Owen Murray as well, because he went down.
Well, there's this strange divide in that you've got the RCS up in Glasgow, and then all the way down in London, the Academy. Those are only 2 places in the UK that you can really go to study that stuff and get into it. Even to be exposed to it.
Very good.
Yeah.
So we're just going to jump on to another video. We're going to have Out by the Isle, a song for our times. Do you want to tell us a bit about that track?
Yeah, sure. So this was in my final year at RCS. I was doing all sorts of things. Basically, I'd got to the point where I just wanted to do projects that I wanted to do, and was finishing the course, but was interested in doing all sorts of other things as well. And I set up over the last couple of years the RCS Storytelling and Song Club, which was meant to be a social group for people not just from the music department, but from all across the different disciplines to get together and have a crack and share some stories and sing a song. And we had poetry and all sorts. And in the last year, the RCS, a friend of mine, a fellow student, set up a festival called the Etch Festival, which was meant to be a student-led festival, and the theme of that year was climate change, because of course there was the big climate conference, COP26 in Glasgow. And so I organised a series of recorded videos to have a wee sort of presentation of stuff from members of the club online, stories and songs related to climate change and the environment. And this is a fantastic song that I learnt from Alison McMorland, who Alison McMorland and Geordie McIntyre were a wee bit like my musical granny and grandpa growing up, because they're great friends with my mum and dad. And it's just a beautiful song about written by Jim and Jean Brown about the world changing and our responsibility to take care of it, really.
Fantastic.
Oh, and I should give a wee shout out to Juliette Lemoine, who's playing cello with me under the bridge by the river.
Here we go.
Fantastic.
Out by the isle, we watched for a while as the seals swam in the water clear, and we sang to them too, the way we always do. joy of seeing them draw near. They were part of the world that we knew. Never thought that their days would be through. Now the seals share our song no more, slowly dying by the shore. In a tropical land where the tall trees stand, giving shelter to all who live below. As the great forest sighs, its breath fills the skies and drifts with the winds that blow. Now the trees are cut down in their prime, sacrificed for the needs of the time. Soon the world will breathe only despair. Through the poisoned air. As we watch on the sea, a world fair and green, ravaged by man's careless greed. If life is our choice, we must be the voice for the earth in her time of need. Or the seals and the forests must die, while spaceships are searching the sky. If they find there a world that is new, well, we leave that dying too. Out by the isle we watched for a while as the seals swam in the water clear, and we sang to them too, the way we always do, for the joy of seeing them draw near.
Yeah, well done.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Very interesting. You're telling a story there, as you say. You got into storytelling. Up here in Shetland, storytelling's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Lots of storytellers with the folklore, etc. And
well, I'm gutted. I have been wanting to visit Orkney and Shetland for years and years and years, and still haven't made it up. And I'm hoping that maybe this year might be the year. But it's funny because the very first storytelling show I worked on was about the story, or a story, of the Vikings coming to Shetland. And so I looked at a lot of the folklore and the history and everything of that, and the musical connections across there.
Yeah, there's a lot of folk stories, etc., and folklore up here, weather related, and history related, all that kind of stuff. It's really interesting. There's a lot of good stuff. And I think a lot of it is very much embellished as the years go on, of course. And some of these stories have been made very interesting.
Well, it's interesting with storytelling because sometimes stories contain traces of history. Folk tales contain a lot of that stuff, but have these embellishments, and where the stories come from is really, really interesting.
Yeah, very much so. What was I going to say? So you've left the RCS now. So did you get your graduation last week?
Well, I have to put my hands up and say I didn't actually go. I went to an after party.
Oh, well done, Davey! You just landed the man in it.
It's all right. Someone would have noticed.
Well, we had an online graduation last year, which was all right.
Yeah.
And I was really busy over the last week, and it felt a bit strange because I've been away for a year now and sort of doing my own thing, and I felt I'd kind of finished that anyway. But it was really nice to see some friends and stuff afterwards.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to the past 12 months then?
Well, it's been really busy actually. My understanding was when you leave uni, there's meant to be a good year, maybe even a couple of years where you're kind of wobbling about, finding your feet, not having much to do, and sort of. But it's been absolutely non-stop for me. I've done lots over the last year. One very big thing I did back in December was I did a recording of an album, which is hopefully to be released in 3 or 4 months, maybe a wee bit longer. And it's an album of classical music for the accordion by a Scottish composer called Ronald Stevenson. And I think actually one of the videos we're going to hear has one of those pieces on it. And in my life,
Anna Wendy Stevenson's grandfather.
Yes, the very same.
Yes,
very same.
Anna Wendy was I done the UHI applied music course. The degree.
Oh, right.
And Anna Wendy was one of the course leaders.
Yeah.
So she introduced us, of course, to her grandfather Ronald playing piano.
Yeah.
And he was an amazing musician as well.
An incredible musician, and he should be better known in
Absolutely.
the Scottish and international scene. And
he rubbed shoulders with some of the best in the world.
Absolutely. I mean, there's an incredible recording that's just come out recently by Igor Levitt of his Passacaglia on DSCH, which is a sort of over an hour long solo piece for piano, which he wrote for Shostakovich, and there's a famous picture of him handing the score to Shostakovich. Fantastic composer. He wrote a few things for classical accordion. He actually
I never knew that. So there we go. I've learned something.
So he actually worked with Owen Murray, who you mentioned earlier. Owen Murray left Scotland, went and studied in Denmark, and when he came back, he worked with quite a few Scottish composers, people like Eddie Maguire and John MacLeod and Ronald Stevenson. And there's a couple of fantastic pieces which were played at their premieres and then haven't been played again since the 80s. And in my last year at RCS, I discovered one of these pieces called The Harlot's House, which is for accordion and percussion. And it's got this incredible percussion setup with about every percussion instrument you can imagine, from bass drum, timpani, snare, marimba, xylophone, cymbals, and a poor percussionist running from one side of the stage to the other, hitting things left, right, and centre. But it's an incredible. This
is starting to sound like an accordionist version of Benjamin Britten's Noah's Flood. The poor percussion player in that had some job as well. Well,
what I'll do, I'll stop you there.
Sure.
And we'll listen to A Celtic Cycle.
Yeah. So this is there were two pieces that Stevenson wrote for classical accordion. There was the Harlot's House, percussion and accordion, and then there was this, which is a suite of 3 shorter pieces called A Celtic Cycle, and this is just the first and the third from those that suite.
Splendid. Yeah, that's superb. I'm so glad, Neil, that you're on the show tonight, highlighting the accordion played in this genres as well, because we really
also highlighting the accordion being played well. When Peter plays it, it's
well, I'm really passionate about just the breadth of music that you can play on the accordion, not with any sort of elitism of like what's better or worse. I come from trad background and I play lots of trad music and I love jazz, but just I think in Scotland we do tend to have a wee bit of a narrow-minded view of the instrument, just as a traditional instrument.
I think so.
And
I think it fell into that. It fell into that kind of category, didn't it? There was always an Achille band, and that was it.
Yeah.
But there are many players about it as well, actually, that play quite different, a lot of genres of music, and some that do play what we're just talking about just now, Achille music, etc., traditional music, don't actually go out and play other genres, but some of them are actually quite good at them. Actually, when you sit down and have a in a bedroom somewhere and you go, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that." You know, it's good. So it's cool.
So as you're saying, so that's been you've recorded that as an album of the classical stuff. So you say that's next few months you're looking at releasing that?
I think it'll maybe be sort of in the beginning of the new year. We're sort of waiting to put that together. But keep an eye. It's from it's Toccata Classics is the record label, and they're based in England, but they sort of specialize in recording music that classical music or contemporary music that isn't so often recorded, not just the greats over and over again. So they've got fantastic CDs out.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Really great. So the best place to get your recordings, Neil, is
it will be on my website when it's out. When it's out, check out the website, and there'll be stuff up there.
How many albums have you done so far?
Well, so I've only actually done one album that's out, and that is with my duo partner Rue Geddes, and we've got a duo together named very inventively Rue and Neil.
Yeah, it took a while. It took a while to. I see what you've done now. It took me a wee while to work that out.
Well, it actually did take a while, and then we came back to Rue and Neil.
I was thinking it was more like, right, we need to get this name sorted, and then we can go to the pub. Right, so, Rue and Neil. Yeah, that's it. Let's go.
I'll bet.
That's how Peter named his band.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah. They had like a good 30-second discussion before they go to the pub.
Yeah. Well, keep it simple. Keep it practical.
And I don't go to the pub though. I play.
Paid for it.
Yeah.
So what instruments are in the duo of Rue and Neil?
So it's accordion and violin. Rue's a fantastic violinist, and we've been playing together for ages and ages, since we're about 12, 13 years old. And we started off, we kind of have followed a similar path, coming from a sort of traditional music background, but we both went and studied classical at the same time, and Rue does a lot of jazz and American folk music and stuff as well. But this album is called Homelands, and we launched it just in May, just a few months ago this year. We had a tour around Scotland, and it's music that we've been writing together for about 5 years, on and off, because we've both been so busy with other projects. But it uses the big accordion that I use for classical music, the big accordion that has this system called the free bass in the left hand, which is different from the bass notes and the chords, the Stradella bass, which we're more used to in the UK. It uses that accordion, and we sort of explore the sort of the limits of both our instruments, and draw on a variety of different styles. Undercurrents of trad through the whole thing is kind of where it's rooted, but there's some jazzy stuff, there's some more classical kind of contemporary stuff on there as well. But the album is really about stories. It's about each piece is inspired by a place or a community or a group of people that have sort of felt like home from us, felt like our roots.
How do you find? I mean, this is probably quite new to a lot of people when you go out and play this style.
Yes.
quite into it. How are you finding the audiences are responding? Quite well?
Well, to be honest, we weren't sure how it was going to turn out because our music, me and Rue, is a little bit sort of, you know, in between the boxes, if it were, not out of the box, but sort of not over a few different genres. But people responded really well. We've had a lot of lovely feedback, and I think the key for us is coming back to that storytelling element. We do quite a lot of work, chat in our gig, introducing and setting up each tune, because each piece, each composition sort of follows a narrative, and there's images and characters and stories that come out of it. And we've found a lot of people have said after gigs that they really enjoyed that, and it kind of, you know, opened the music up to them, having this introduction of, you know, this is what the piece is going to sound like, this is where we're going to go. And I'm very passionate about that in any musical context. You know, you can just play the music nice, pure and simple, and not introduce it. I think the more context people have, and the more they feel like they've, you know, the more an audience feels like they've got a connection with you as a person in an informal, nice way. Especially, I mean, coming from a classical world as well, like there's a real problem in classical music where people don't know how to talk. This is a huge generalization, but, you know, not in the same way in trad or jazz, where, you know, performers are a wee bit more used to sort of chatting informally with an audience.
I agree with you. I think it's really important, even like obviously I'm playing mostly traditional music, but I think it's really important to know your pieces, know the tune titles, etc. Know the composers, give them some credit for what they've done, kind of style thing. It drives me a bit nuts when somebody sits down and says, "Here's a set of reels. I can't remember what the first one's called, and the second one, I can't mind. So I heard somebody playing that somewhere, and and then the last one, that was, you're like, that's great, but it's so nice to actually. I think if you're willing to play somebody's tune, you could at least give them a credit for it. You know, I think it's really nice.
Yeah,
that's it. It's when you hear things, it's a traditional tune, and then you realise it's the Inside Out Fish Eater by Peter Wood, and they're like, that's not traditional. That's not traditional.
But if I ever get that, I'll just put a PRS form in the post to them. In the rare chance.
So we're kind of marching on with time, Neil. So what we're going to do is after the album came out in May, you've toured. Are you planning on doing anything at Celtic Connections? Have you tried getting anything with Celtic Connections this year with them?
We haven't been in touch with them. I was just thinking today, actually, that might be handy, might be a good idea to just give an email and see if there's anything going. We were actually meant to have a wee slot last year because 2 years ago we did Rue and I together. We were one of the finalists in the Danny Kyle Open Stage, and part of that was a wee support slot in the next thing. But it got cried off because of COVID. I think it was a big fiasco. You know, one of them. I think it was the Omicron that.
I suffered from that one too. I was to be down doing a gig at the Piping Centre. Omicron got us. And the restrictions lifted on the Monday, and our gig was supposed to be the Saturday, but we missed it.
So that'd be So let us know if that happens, because we'll share it about. But if you send them a link to this video, you'll to try and push you.
Absolutely,
absolutely.
But I think as Peter's mentioned before, traditional music's in good hands with those that are coming through, and by the sounds of it, the classical accordions in good hands as well. With yourself, Neil. So just kind of sum it up before we hear the track from your album, which is Heartaches. From the workshop sessions. I just want to kind of thank you for coming on. Like you said, if you hadn't been on that film, you probably would have been bypassed because because you're mainly classical trained. So it's great to have kind of found you and put you on this platform to the other folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope people jump on and buy the albums and learn about all the different kinds of genres of music that Mr. Sutcliffe is promoting here, folks. And I'm sure if you want to buy an album, you'd be delighted.
I'd be over the moon.
The cupboards are full. So, do you want to tell us about this track, Hearties, before we let you go?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for having me on. I've had a lovely time. Yeah, this tune is the last one on the album of Homelands with me and Roo, and we wrote it for some friends of ours, a family called the Harty family, who live down in the north of England in a wee village called Brinscoe, not far from Chorley, just outside of Preston. And they're a wonderful family, very musical, very arty, and they have this lovely house that we've been down to a few times, where you come in and you're welcomed in the door, you have a cup of tea, and immediately the chat starts flowing. And we wanted to write this tune that just sort of represented that feeling of when you haven't seen friends or family for a long time and you come to their home, there's this buzz, this warmth, there's so much to talk about, you're jumping from subject to subject, that just trying to cram everything in. And so this tune is just mad, sort of jumping from thing to thing, but it finishes up with the very first melody that we ever wrote for the album, which is a sort of just a pure dedication to friendship and sort of that warmth of seeing your pals.
Fantastic. Neil, thanks so much for giving up time and coming on the Sunday night to be in the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I've had a fantastic time.
Right. All the best in the future.
All the best.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hearties.
Fantastic. Absolutely lovely to see someone so connected to their instrument. You can tell the compassion and the feeling, it just becomes part of him, his instrument.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
With passion as well. Passion.
Absolute, yeah. And expert musicians. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic to have Neil on there as a guest. Really nice. Good. And nice to have a different genre going through. Just really nice.
We may be tartan
want-
tunes, but we don't do tartan tat.
Right, listen, our next guest going on as well. This man is certainly not tartan tat. This man is one of the best guitar players in the world, acoustic guitar players in the world. And you know something that's amazing about this man?
He
such a
is
nice,
American.
He's not American, no. He's Scottish. But one thing that's amazing about him is he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I've met him a few times when he's been up in Shetland and things. And it's not just me that says this. Everybody that meets this man says, what a nice guy. What a really, really nice guy.
Is he a nice guy because he can play the banjo but chooses not to?
he maybe can.
He's nodding his head.
He is nodding his head. It's quite good that folk can't see him off. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so thrilled to have on Tartan Tunes show tonight the one and the only extraordinary guitar player himself, Mr. John Goldie. Hello, John.
Hello.
How are you doing, sir? You all right?
Good. Roasted with the marvellous Scottish weather.
Aye. You pair keep going on about this.
I know.
Just as I mentioned earlier that there was a polar bear scratching in the window, but it's actually gone across. It's gone across the garden now because it's chasing a walrus.
Right.
So it's all right. So,
you might want to give it your jacket, Peter.
Aye. You're okay. There's a camel just went past the studio there.
A camel looking for a drink. So that really, that reminds me, I've got a good friend up here that plays guitar, Brian Nicholson, John, and he was asking very kindly for you today. I was playing a gig with him, and he said he was telling me about his 90-year-old mother just lately, and one thing that really annoys her on the television is when the adverts come on, you know, for all different charities and sponsor this and sponsor that. And there was one come on, and it's, you know, sponsored an elephant for £2 a month or something. And she turned around to Brian and went, and where the hell would we keep an elephant? She kind of missed the point that you don't actually get the elephant. Never mind.
It's like the one where they say you can provide water to a village for £1 a month.
Yeah.
Where on earth you get water for £1 a month?
I bet it costs a wee bit more than that, maybe. But anyway, John, fantastic to have you on.
Yep.
We're going to have a great blather about. You've been up in Shetland, as I said there, quite a few times. We met you up here. And,
different guises, yep.
Different guises. I've heard you in 2 or 3 different guises, yeah.
Yeah, I think first time might have been the Accordion and Fiddle Club with Jack Emblow.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. I remember you coming up. And because Jack was great, of course, and sometimes Martin Taylor would come up with Jack as well sometimes.
That's right.
Or yourself.
Yeah,
and,
so we did that, and I think we might have came up with the Spirit Triangle group.
Yeah, because you were up at one of the Peary Willie guitar music festivals as well.
I played at the first Peary Willie guitar festival with Martin and Steve Kaufman from near Nashville area, and Eduardo Nibla, I think, the flamenco player, I think, was the first one, and Peary Willie himself. So yeah.
Well, where I am here tonight, I'm in Mid-Yell, which is maybe 5 miles from where Peary Willie was born in the Hera.
Right.
That's where he came from in the island of Yell. So it's great. But it was it was great having that festival. It was really good. So you one thing we should say about yourself is you're involved with many genres of music as well. Over the years, you've been involved with lots of different stuff.
I mean, it's great. I mean, hearing Neil's stuff was really interesting for me because I'm a bit similar in that I tend to jump between a few different things just because that's how I write music or how I think. And it's like I think Neil was implying that sometimes it's a bit difficult because people can't put you in a box. So you know, if you go between, if you're not quite jazz, you're not quite classical, you're not quite whatever. I'm sort of similar in that I just write stuff and that's it. I don't really have I don't have a plan before it. I'm going to write a specific style of music because I don't think I'd be able to do that. not easily certainly, but so everything I've written is like quite different, I suppose. And the only sort of connecting factor is I've written all the music, I suppose. That's about it.
Well, I think one thing that stands out so much about your music as well is, apart from being just an expert and an exponent of the guitar, is the genres you're playing, yes, etc., etc. But you get this thing into your music, and it's like this really nice pulse and groove going, and it's really. Right. And a lot of players, you get a lot of that players that are technically just incredibly gifted, but there's that ease missing. Which it just seems to flow through your veins, and it just seems to go into that guitar. And when I was chatting with Brian today as well, and he happened to just mention it, and it'd been something else I'd been thinking about when I was listening to your video. And you just make it look incredibly easy, but also there's that lovely flow that just seems to keep going through your playing. That's fantastic.
Tell Brian I'm glad the check cleared.
Aye,
I thought it was a bank transfer.
It's absolutely true, and I mean, we're going to listen to some of your music tonight, and the first tune we're going to listen to is with the string quartet.
Yeah,
and this is the Flying Scotsman. This was
originally a solo piece, just like I just wrote it as a solo guitar piece, and then when we came to do the album with the string quartet, it was one I thought would work well with them. And again, it's like the string players, they're all slightly different genres as well, so it's a some are more classically more towards the classical side, some are more towards the traditional side, and it's just good when you put all that together, you can make some great stuff with it.
Because I think you've got Kristen Harvey's in this one. We've had Kristen's been on as a guest before.
Yeah, so Kristen Harvey and Shona Aitken, who put string records together, and also we have Patsy Reed. And Alex Allen. So basically, the top players in Scotland, there or thereabouts.
So what inspired the Flying Scotsman then?
The Flying Scotsman is inspired by a train journey. So normally if I'm playing solo gigs, most of what I do is finger style, but Flying Scotsman's with a pick, just to get a bit more kind of energy into the whole thing. So most of my stuff that I write has got a visual image that's really strong for me when I'm writing it. So when I'm writing it, the visual image is there at the same time. It's just what I've always done. I don't really know why that is, but so the whole feel of it's to do with a steam train journey type of thing.
Great. So here we go. We have John Goldie and the High Plains with the Flying Scotsman. That's driving along, John. That's driving.
I think the one thing I think that is not missing, it is missing from a Western.
Right.
Yeah.
That if you could go right, if we're looking for we need something, a driving track for a Western. We've got the coaches, but just plop that there, it'd work without any problems.
Well, a lot of stuff that I write has got a kind of supposed cinema friendly thing to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've written a lot of stuff for TV and film, but not specifically stuff like that. I think stuff like that would work really well, but when I have written specifically for, it's been with a publishing company, and you just write the stuff, so it's not available to the public. It's only in the media of TV or film. So I've done that. I've done a lot of that actually, but which is great because it's just, it's a bit of fun to do. And I just went to London, recorded an album for them, and then the next thing it's on, I don't know, whatever programs it's on, but a lot of stuff which is really good, like Country File and Top Gear and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's
I never recognise you. You're the Stig, aren't you?
I'm Stig. My helmet's in the cupboard.
That explains it.
I think I drive like a Stig's granny. I'm like,
apparently, your parents were quite surprised when you asked for a guitar, weren't they? Because they weren't musical, really.
No, they're not musical at all. They were completely unmusical, actually. I think pretty much. I mean, there isn't really anybody in my family musical. I'm the sort of black sheep, I suppose. Really, it's just me. I think I've got one cousin that I think plays a bit of guitar, but not that I know particularly well. But just
what drew you to the guitar then?
I actually honestly don't know. I asked for a guitar when I was about 6, and I just started learning how to play it when I was about 6. So that's what they told me, but I don't really recall. I mean, I've got a terrible memory anyway, but I don't really recall actually the thought in my head. I want a guitar. It was just like it was just there. It was just like I need a guitar to play or whatever. I don't know. And they got me one of those terrible, guitars with a really high action. It's difficult to play and kind of double as a crossbow and you can shoot deer or whatever with it. That type of thing. So I had one of them, but I just think it just must have been there in the first place. It's somewhere in my head or whatever. So I just taught myself. But I wasn't around any place, so I couldn't ask for advice for Andy either. So it wasn't until much later, I got a bit of help with it.
So one name I noticed in your bio was Frank Henry.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Frank, I think I maybe met Frank. Frank used to play with an accordion player called Morag Robertson?
Yes, he did. Yeah. They played at my wedding, actually.
Right.
Frank and Morag and a drummer played at my wife and I's wedding. That was my...
Wow. I remember listening to Frank. Frank and Morag used to go around the accordion clubs. And that was actually something quite different for accordion clubs because they tended to be very Scottish dance bandy and that kind of style.
Yeah.
And then Frank and Morag would turn up and do jazz and continental and all that.
I'm the King of the Swingers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Exactly, but he had a great style. He had this really easy style that he used to just sit there and enjoy himself playing.
Old school rhythm guitar player. He was from the kind of White Heather Club era, where he used to. I don't know. He did all these tours with Sidney Devine when he was younger, and like loads of kind of just that type of stuff. He was just like a marvelous rhythm guitar player. He's a marvelous guitar player. Full stop. So the thing with Frank was, I was wanting to try and learn how to read music, but because I was self-taught and I was a good player as a child. So like when I was 12, I was playing with guys at 30, 35 years old and in bands playing like rock music and stuff like that. So I could play well in that kind of genre when I was that age. So because of that, people were always going, oh, the boy's great and all this kind of thing. But at the back of my head, it used to annoy me that I couldn't actually read Baba Black Sheep in music. And there's something just going away. And they were saying, don't learn how to read music. It'll ruin you. You'll lose anything you've got. And fortunately, I didn't listen to any of them. And I went to Frank. And I'd given up. I went to a few teachers and they just weren't really for me. It just didn't work at all. And I was getting a bit and I met this guy who said, try Big Frank. So I went to Frank's house, and it was like one of those like 2-up flats, and it was like wild dogs running about. It was a terrible area. You know, it was like you needed like an escort to get in and out of the building kind of thing. So I went there and I was like pretty nervous.
Don't take your good Gibson to that lesson.
No, you don't take. You had to, you know, you had to be able to run fast as well. So anyway, got to Frank's, went in, and he's always called me Johnny. He's the only person who's ever called me Johnny, right? Even though my name's John, and I introduced myself or phoned him up and said it's John. He says, Johnny, come on in, sit down. So I hadn't taken my jacket off at this point. And he said, right, play me something. So I played him just some stuff, I don't know, Leonard Skinner or Led Zeppelin, whatever it was. And he just looked at me and went, I can't help you, son. He said, I can't do that. I says, no, I want to learn how to read music. And just this big smile over his face, and he went, I can help you with that, son. Take your jacket off. So I took my I literally went back to square one, you know, the first string open, 1, 2, 3, 4, first finger, you know, the very basics. So what I realised was that most people, if they can play the guitar a wee bit, won't do that because it's embarrassing. You can't play a simple thing. He made me aware of how important it was to do that, and he also made it fun. So I was out playing gigs at the weekend and doing whatever I was doing. When I went to him, I was just reading. And it went on and on and on. And eventually what he did with me was when I walked into his house, there was always music on. And so I'd walk in the door and he said, Johnny, what key's that in, son? And it'd be like brass band music or something. I'm going, and I'm just guessing, I'm going F, and he'd go, oh, for God's sake, son, it's nowhere near it. But see, when you've done that about 20 times, you start to get it, right? And then he started asking me every chord change. Every time I went in, before I sat down, he would say, right, what keys in, what are the chords, tell me the chords as they change, etc. He did that every single week.
Wow.
Which I thought was just a bit of a laugh. I didn't really realise it was helping me.
Yeah.
And then when I sat down towards the end, he would put down any tune at all with just the music and with the melody and the chords, and I'd have to play the two of them together the first time I seen it every single week. So I'd done that for a while. I hadn't really realised that was actually quite difficult to do, you know, until later on. And I went, well, I could just do that. And then I went, no, it's not I just can do it. It's just because he's done it with me every single time. So Frank was hugely important to me, just in the whole learning thing,
Which is leading me on to a wee bit here, which is fantastic. It's just worked out good. The wee track we're going to hear next, one of the things you are famed for is being able to do this amazing collaboration of things all at once. You can do a bass line, you can do a chord, you're playing a melody, and getting that groove into it that I was talking about before. There's still feeling. You're doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you can do it all at one time. One of the first times I heard you demonstrating it was, and we're not having that track tonight actually, but I heard you live doing the Mission Impossible thing.
Oh, right.
And I thought, how do you do that? How does this guy's playing a 4-piece band and a winner here? What's going on here? And it's amazing. And does that must have taken a while to sit down, or did you find that came quite naturally to?
That's quite tricky to answer that. So, since you said Mission Impossible, I did Mission Impossible purely to see if I could do it. I didn't do it with a view to playing it at gigs. I don't really play it at gigs very often, but I sometimes use it as a sort of demonstration thing to explain what I'm doing. But the other one I use sometimes is It's Not Unusual, the Tom Jones thing, because it's actually got on and off, it's got 4 different things running through it all the time. And there's like really radically different rhythmic things in it. So I think what I started doing was when I started working with Martin Taylor, he didn't sort of sit down and show me anything, but I learned a lot from being around him. And the stuff that he was playing, I didn't find frightening. I thought, that's great, I love that. So I started to play that kind of thing. So I understood how to be able to do a few things at once, and then obviously didn't want to do the same thing as Martin did. So I just went off and did other things with it. So I've used it in a lot of pop tunes just for an example, to get something a wee bit. Plus, your audience likes to hear different things. You know, if you just get in and play a completely set of your own music, that's great. And some venues want you to do that. But if you're playing a gig and there's like, you know, some guitar players there, but partners, you know, husbands, wives, they don't play the guitar, who have no interest in the guitar. If you can tell them some half-decent stories and play stuff that they like,
entertainment.
That does make a big difference. I think that's what I've learned.
Absolutely. It sells it entertainment-wise as well. Yeah. It makes you a musician as well as an entertainer. Well, the example we're going to have here is, as you say, different style, Dolly Parton, and it's 95.
Who doesn't love Dolly?
Davey just said that. My favourite track of the night. He said earlier on, he says, "I love Dolly Parton."
Well, did you know? Yep. Did you know that Dolly Parton lost a Dolly Parton lookalike contest to a man?
It surprised me.
Yeah.
Really?
She didn't look enough like Dolly.
Aye. It's funny actually. The funny thing with this tune is that I like the song obviously, but when I'm doing these kind of things, there's got to be some sort of challenge in it. And you were saying earlier, Peter, the groove thing, and it's to keep that, whether it's a walking bass line thing or whether it's Mission Impossible, because Mission Impossible's got almost like a swung bass line, but it's in 5/4, that kind of bump, dun, dun, dun. But the melodies is dead straight. So the challenge, or one of the several hundred challenges with that tune, is to do the two things at the same time. So in 95, it's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of vibe. On gigs, I bring a little sheet with the lyrics on it for the chorus and get everybody to sing it. Right. Because every single person thinks they can sing 95, and they go, working night, and they start singing it, and then they realise they only know the 3 words. I'm working 95, 11, so nobody gets it right. So that's a bit of fun. So I get somebody who's like hand out the lyrics, have everybody singing it by the end, and that's a good part of the gig.
Well, here it is. This is a great track, 95.
Okay, magic.
That's awesome. It's just awesome.
Go Dolly.
I love it. Just go Dolly. Davey, see when you were saying about
off there.
Yeah, when Davey was saying about Dolly winning her own competition there.
Yeah.
I've been dabbling with TikTok in the last 2 weeks, baby,
Right.
and it's quite amusing. You have to take the flack, don't you? So I put a wee track of the band on,
Right.
and there was this comment come back saying, look, it's Peter Griffin from Family Guy playing the accordion.
Oh dear.
So you just have to take the flack with that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
So my next track that I put up, I hashtagged Peter Griffin and Family Guy, and it fairly helped the viewing numbers.
40 million hits.
You need to wear yourself a green trousers.
Aye.
So we've got past that, but you started doing gigs.
Yep.
You were playing in bands, etc., etc., but you were kind of into electric guitar and things, weren't you? And then
I originally.
Where did acoustic start mattering then?
Funny enough, quite a bit later. I mean, I had a sort of like almost a different career as an electric player. So I did a lot of. Initially, I did like functions, clubs, all the usual sort of stuff. Then I got headhunted by somebody to go and do like European touring for Motown artists that were touring from America. So they'd have a pickup. They bring a couple of players over and then pick up like guitar and a couple of people from the UK, normally London, but I got in that. So I did a couple of years of that.
Right.
And then I did a couple of other electric. When you're in the scene doing the electric stuff, the other thing is we're going back to Frank, so I could read music. So one of the big advantages is if you can read music and you can completely sort of rock out and do stuff, play funky stuff like that. So I ended up doing, again, I got sort of headhunted for Jesus Christ Superstar, the Lloyd Webber show, by the MD of the show, who had seen me playing and knew my playing. So I'm not really a big musical fan, never listened to musicals or did anything, but Superstar is one of those things. It's a full-out rock gig for the guitar. There's 2 guitars on it, and it's like it's a massive sounding thing to play. It's really good fun. So I did that. While I was on that, another guy that I met said, look, I need some time off Kid Creole's gig. Do you want to come and do that? So I ended up doing that. It was great. It's just straight ahead funk, pure joy, really. Audiences go absolutely nuts every night. It's just brilliant. So, I had a sort of period where I was going between some of those gigs and doing quite a bit of travelling as well. And then because on the Lloyd Webber stuff, you've got loads of downtime during the day because you're only playing in the evening. So I actually bought a good acoustic. And as soon as I bought a good acoustic, I started writing on acoustic. So that's how I got into it. And just like we used to just stay in cottages around the country when we were travelling on the gigs. So we never stayed in the city. We just went out, stayed in the country, just out the road. Fortunately, a couple of good summers when I was on tour, so I'd sit outside, play, and I was just writing stuff which had a kind of Celtic feel, maybe with some jazzy type harmony in it.
Your career wouldn't have went very far up here if you were sitting outside in Shetland playing the guitar.
Anyway. Everything would have been slower and much shorter. Yes, and maybe a bit more miserable. Because of the weather, I mean, not people obviously, So I did that for a bit, and then I had maybe about half a dozen songs that I felt these are quite good, but I didn't actually know anything about the acoustic scene at all. So I contacted some people who I felt would know about it, and they said, "Oh yeah, the best guy in the world for it is in Germany. This guy called Peter Finger. Ironically, good name for a guitar player. I'm not making that up. You can Google him. He's a phenomenal player, and he runs like a mini guitar empire, acoustic guitar empire, in a place called Osnabrück in Germany. So I called him up, and I sent him a cassette with the songs on it. And then
there's a lot of things started with a cassette,
Yeah, and then he phoned back and he said, "Yes, I like your music," and he gave me some dates. He said, "Just come to me." So I've never met him before in my life. But when I looked into it, I realised he's a very famous player in Europe. Very, very famous guitar player. So I flew into somewhere near Osnabrück, got the train to Osnabrück. He met me at the station. I stayed, he'd apartments in one of the buildings that he owns. He had apartments above the studio. So went up, stayed in the apartment, went down, worked with him in the studio for a couple of days, did an album, and he just gave me the master. And he said, look, we've got a backlog of about 5 years worth of CDs. He said, I can't release it just now, but he just gave me the master. That was it. Didn't charge me anything, nothing. And I'm still in touch with him. I've toured with him quite a bit in Europe. Just to give you an idea, I mean, the guitar night tours that he does in Europe are probably minimum audiences of maybe 800 to 1,000 people a night. For people like me, him, that were not big names outside the guitar world necessarily, but big audience for it there, and he's responsible for building it up. So he's a great guy to work with. And I've done another couple of, in fact, the album that 95 is on his label in Germany. It's called Acoustic Music. That's the label. And also did a video or a DVD, of me how to play Smoke in the Water and Honky Tonk Women on a solo acoustic guitar with all different bits and three big TV cameras and all high spec. So it's really good.
Because I noticed in your YouTube channel as well, you have quite a lot of instructional videos on your YouTube channel.
A lot of that is from lockdown. So there was a kind of there was a lot of interesting, kind of quite basic stuff, not so much the more difficult things. I run residential guitar weekends, and we were just getting to the point where everyone was sold out, and then obviously COVID hit. So in fact, I did one that was rescheduled about 5 times, but we did it in February, and amazingly enough, no one took their deposit back, and everybody just turned up as if nothing had happened. It was bizarre, really nice, but I mean bizarre. So we have a great time doing them there. I really like doing them. I like teaching. I've always liked it. So it's good fun, and we've got great people that turn up. And it's quite different as well. So
I've heard lots of people saying that about yourself. When you don't keep it all to yourself, you're quite happy to pass on when you can. Kind of stuff.
It's like, I think that's the way to do it. Really, there's not much point in keeping it in back. You just the thing is, I suppose a lot of the time that some of the really important stuff can be a wee bit boring to practice. And people maybe don't want to do it. Like practicing my metronome, for example. As soon as I bring the metronome out, people that have been at my workshops before start to groan loudly because not the metronome, please. But the reality is that most people struggle to play with it. So the idea isn't that you think to yourself, oh, I'm not very good, I can't play the metronome. The idea is, oh, this is a different skill that I should maybe look at, and then that helps with playing.
We're going to hear another wee track here. This one is Those Who Fell. Can you tell us a wee bit about Those Who Fell? What's the track
Those
here?
Who Fell is written about sort of going through Glencoe. So I used to work in a studio on the other side of Glencoe, and I was driving up and down quite a bit. And what I found with that is that the light changes all the time. It's an amazing place, obviously, but sometimes in certain lights, it just looked to me like sort of like graves. That's what I saw in my head. So Those Who Fell is to do with the kind of battles there and the murders and all the gory stuff. But it's played on a nylon string guitar, which is again not something I'm known for at all. It also has the strings in it, and again, it was written as a solo piece first, and then did it with the strings for that album.
When you're talking about Glencoe, I used to play in the Clachy Inn in Glencoe sometimes.
Right.
And I remember finishing one night about 1 o'clock and heading out, and you'll know the area, you've driven up through Glencoe many times. There used to be a big bit that lots of people used to put all their little tents. There used to be almost like a campsite. It was all like students and things, these little bell tents.
That's right.
So it was like 1:30 in the morning. There was a big waterfall at the side of the road, so couldn't resist it. Pulled the car over, got the pipes out, and played a big haunting slow air.
Right.
Jumped in the car and disappeared. And as we were halfway through it, you could see all the little lights coming on in the tents, and folks sitting there going, "Oh, for goodness sake!" And so about a fortnight later, what? Go on.
Did you say haunting or honking?
Honking. Honking. Well, anyway, I was about a fortnight later back at the Glen, at the Clackheath, and the guy said, "You guys weren't mucking about the way home 2 weeks ago, were you?" And I said, "Oh, why?" And he said, "There was a report in the local paper," he says, "about some ghost piper or something like that." Right. Oh, well, that's like, good. Made it again. Made it in any way to get in the paper.
No.
Anyway, those who fell. This is beautiful. Enjoy, folks. John Goldie.
Thank you.
Those who fell. Lovely piece of music, John.
Thank you.
And Shona doing the stringing arrangements for
yeah.
She's a lovely person, Shona, too. She's just great.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, really, it's funny actually because when Shona was doing arrangements originally, she was sending me there was these kind of MIDI file things. Of course, I don't know if you've heard that, but it doesn't sound great.
No.
You know? Yeah. And so the first time we were doing a festival in Ullapool, and we went to do the rehearsal, and when we sat down, they played it live for the first time. It was really emotional for me because it was just like you're just surrounded by this sound, and you're going, right, that's what I was kind of hoping it would be. You know,
It would sound like
because the Edinburgh thing just really can't tell from it, sort of thing. But
no, that's right. It's this electronic sound thing. It's just fantastic. Albums, John. You've got a number of albums out now. But you did watercolor music. You done 4 albums with them.
I did a couple. I did let's think the watercolor. I did a couple of solo ones at watercolor, and I did 2 with a band that had Angus Lyon, Duncan Lyle, and Jim Drummond in it, and that was a great project working with them. It was really, really good. But it's the usual thing. It's like everybody's busy, so it's trying to get. It's like with the string players as well, trying to get the girls all together. It's very, very difficult because everybody's doing so many different projects. And the same with, like, obviously now Angus and Duncan, their work seemed to just go through the roof. But it was great working with them. I mean, just really good fun.
I suppose it's quite interesting you hitting on that, actually, because when you're playing acoustic guitar and goes out as a soloist, it's quite a nice position to be in for travel, accommodation, everything, isn't it? It's easy just to go and look after yourself and do it. Do you mind playing as a solo performer, or do you quite like it?
I like both, actually. The solo thing, what I like about solo performance is obviously it is just me, but you're in control of the whole vibe of the room. I try and connect, sort of make a connection with the audience, hence the stories and all that. And I'm sort of hoping they really buy into what you're playing when you play it. So I'm trying to, draw them into what I'm doing, so that, and you can do that with a band as well, but more so with the solo thing, because you can hear a pin drop. So on the one hand, you might think, oh, I might be a nervous wreck, because you can hear a pin drop and what happens if it goes all wrong or something like that. But the upside of it is that by the end of the gig, if it's been a great gig, people are knocked out by it because they've bought into the whole thing. They went a week in a journey with you, which I think is a nice thing. So it's more than just. I mean, some of my stuff, like guitar players might listen to it and go, oh, that's really hard to play, whatever. But I don't really think like that. I'm thinking more entertainment when it comes to an audience, And again, it's because there'll be people in the audience that don't play the guitar.
Aye. So best place for folk to get the albums is to go to your website, though.
Aye. That's the easiest.
We can get them for there, which is John Goldie, www. Is Davey will flap that up for us just now in a second.
Apologies.
No, that's probably the best place. I mean, it's not been up, all the stuff's on, obviously, but because I've been working on a few different projects, I'm kind of waiting to kind of update it with dates and stuff that I'm doing rather than.
Great.
Because I think during the lockdown, everybody's like shut down,
Yeah, it's just. But one album you done as well that got top of the tree. Recommendations and reviews for what was the one that you done a lot of pop songs and things, and you done acoustic arrangements.
Aye, that's right. Well, that was the German label, Acoustic Music, and he basically said, "Why don't you do an album just of like pop tunes?" So that kind of started with September by Earth, Wind and Fire. Peter suggesting that I do that, and me suggesting to Peter that there's about 400 people in Earth, Wind and Fire in the band. Just me, and he said, "No, you'll be fine." So just
get on with it.
I just got on with it. So that was one of my favourite ones to do, actually, in '95, and I kind of I tried a few different tunings and things on that album as well.
And one amazing, but I mean, you must have been chuffed with it. I mean, there was high praise and compliments for people like Brian May and Ronnie Woods, and that's great. That must feel wonderful when these guys are saying things are going good.
Aye, well, there's a wee bit of luck involved in that. I did a gig at the Albert Hall in London, and Ronnie Wood, Bill Wyman were also on the gig, and a few other kind of particularly well-known people. So I actually managed to just give them CDs, because I'm slightly different. If you're on stage with them at some point, it's almost like you're not their friend, but it's a wee bit easier to. I did feel a wee bit awkward about it, but they were fine. And Bill Wyman actually sent me back a massive email analysing every single song.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
I think he's got that kind of brain. He just every tune on it. And it was quite odd because I thought, they'll just chuck that straight in the bin. But they didn't actually. Funny enough, I found out Andy Fairweather-Lowe's a good friend of mine, and he actually, funny enough, he sorted out a guitar for me at Albert Hall because my guitar was out of the country at the time. I had to fly back in. I didn't want to bring my guitar, fly back and forth, so I left it on tour in Europe, flew back into London, and Eric Clapton's guitar tech sorted me out with a guitar through Andy Fairweather-Lowe. So it was kind of slightly surreal because I just started flown in, get picked up by a driver and all that kind of stuff. You go to the Albert Hall, and Albert Hall obviously is an amazing place to play. And then you're talking to Eric Clapton's guitar guy who's going, do you want me to set the guitar up for you? What's your specifications? I'm going, I'll just give me anything, I'll be fine. Because I'm very untechnical, so I couldn't say, yeah, my action's this and I need this and blah, blah, blah. I haven't really got that sort of thing. So basically, so that was, and I met loads of people there. In fact, Jan Ackerman, the Dutch guitar player, was there. Got to hang out with quite a lot of really interesting and nice people. They're very famous people, but really nice. So
it's been great. It's been a great experience. This next track we're going to hear, this is an exclusive. Nobody's seen this before.
This has not been on. No, it's not been on.
Not been on Facebook. Yeah, this is fantastic. Tell us a wee bit about this one.
Yeah, so this is the reason that there's no titles or anything on it is it's not finished yet. No, it's nearly finished. Not quite. So this is basically during lockdown. I wrote some stuff that was influenced pretty heavily by bluegrass music. So I've kind of spent a lot of time around bluegrass players. I don't really play bluegrass music per se, but I like this. There's something about it that attracts me to it. There's certain things about it that attract me to it. So I wrote a few.
This sounds a wee bit like Fred Morrison, the piper. We had Fred on,
right?
And he wrote a pipe tune around the bluegrass as well.
Right. Is that legal?
It's illegal.
I don't think it's legal.
It's not been caught yet.
Oh, but it was the same. It's the same kind of story actually. He thought, I'm going to try that, and he did it with small pipes. It's more like the small pipes, rather than big pipe. And he got a lot of the guys on to back him doing the same thing, and it came out.
He's got Ron Block playing with him.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing when you sit in amongst people that play either old timey or bluegrass. There's something about their spirit that's different from like our experiences here, if you know what I mean. And I was lucky enough to be kind of in the middle of a few situations that I kind of felt it quite strongly. I thought, oh right, there's something about that I really love that, So when it came to writing stuff, I just wrote some different things. So there's on the clip, it's just a mashup of 4 tunes that I recorded. But what happened is I did them solo, and then I had an idea that mandolin would work well in it. So I contacted Adam Bully, who you probably noticed filmed some of the stuff earlier. Adam's just one of these guys who's just good at everything, especially guitar, mandolin, filming, photography. I could go on, but yeah. So basically, he then came in and we recorded mandolin, and then we sat down. We thought, Adam actually said, "Do you know what would be great in that? Dobro." Now at that point, I thought, we'll try and get a dobro player in the UK. Now, there may well be dobro players in the UK that are perfect for it, but I couldn't find them. I spoke to session player friends of mine in London, and they said, for what you're doing exactly, he said, not really. So you better to go to Nashville. So my friend's got a studio in Nashville, so I contacted him and I said, look, I sent him the stuff and I said, this is what I want to do. Who can play this kind of stuff? And he said, well, Jerry Douglas, obviously. Or there's this other guy called Gavin Largent. So it's spelled like Gavin, but it's Gavin, the pronunciation is Gavin. So I checked out his playing. He was playing with David Greer, who's like one of the top bluegrass players in America, full stop. He also works with Dan Tyminski, who did the Oh Brother Where Art Thou stuff. Yeah. So he's kind of right off the bat, I'm thinking, but he's the real deal cowboy hat, the Stetson and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, okay, but there's something about his playing that was just going into other zones a wee bit, which is what I do quite a lot. And I thought, I think that'll work. So then we sent the stuff over, And what we did is we filmed him in the studio and recorded it. And then Adam and I were filmed, and then we put it all together. So what the clip you'll see is Adam and I in the same studio in Scotland, and Gavin in the studio in Nashville. And then it's all put together. But he's outstanding, Gavin. As a dobro player, he's ridiculous. But his take on it, the way he improvises and stuff, is he can do all the bluegrass thing, straight ahead stuff, hands down, but he just moves somewhere else, which is perfect for what I'm doing. So basically, we're hoping to take this project out and tour it about or something, if that's possible. That's the plan.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Keep your comments coming in if you want as well. If you want to say anything at all, let's hear for you. But this is a stunning bit of music here. You're going to like it. Great. Stunning. And the string sound, just all strings. You can't beat it. It's just amazing.
Now, John, whenever you use that video again and you're being interviewed and use it, don't tell them you're in 2 different studios because you can't tell.
No, you cannot.
Just different rooms. It's just different rooms. That's all. It's the ambience of the.
It's funny. Every studio in the world seems to have the same carpet. That's it. Carpet. You walk in and there's the carpet.
Fantastic. It's been absolutely phenomenal, John, having you on tonight. I was really interested to read you've done a thing with the faces as well.
No, that's just Ronnie Wood.
Oh,
it was part of on the Royal Albert Hall thing. There was just it was part of it was a charity do for PRS. So there was loads of different people on and loads of different people on stage at the same time. So
right.
I was on stage at the same time as Ronnie Wood, but not like it's like not my best friend or anything like that. But
yeah, but it's been great. You've met so many folk. I mean, you've worked with Tommy Emmanuel for Australia.
Yep.
And George Benson. That must
I've worked with George Benson and Tommy, obviously Martin Taylor.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of great players. I mean, meeting George Benson was like kind of strange because it's just one of those people you just think, come from Scotland, you don't think you're ever going to meet anybody like that, or you don't think you never think you're going to end up playing with them. Do you know what I mean? Quite funny enough, George Benson actually, I met him in the States. A friend of mine took me to this little gig that he plays if he's at home. So I thought he was making it up. He did turn up, so he played at the gig. So I got to play with him a bit and all that kind of stuff. And he was absolutely amazing, and a lovely guy. And then about a year or something later, he was playing Glasgow Jazz Festival, and he asked for me and a trio to play for him and his band, like an after show do. So I phoned up my bass player and said, I've got this, we're going to play for George Benson's band. And he just hung up. So I phoned the drummer up and I said, we're going to play for George Benson band. He went, shut up. So eventually, for real. So we did it. And then, of course, we're there and we're playing, and there was like the mayor or whoever goes to all these things floating about. And then the door opens and George Benson comes in and he comes straight up to the stage and gives me a big hug. And my bass player and drummer are looking at me going, oh, he's right then. I'm going to make that up. So it was an amazing thing, actually. And then, of course, then they realised that George Benson's bass player and drummer are watching them play. But no, I mean, it's like, I find that kind of stuff inspiring. I don't really get nervous about playing with people like that. I think for me, I learn from people that are brilliant. So, I think
especially if they're nice folks and easy to go on with.
Very, very easy to go on with. All of the people you mentioned there are great people to go on with, brilliant musicians, and obviously probably not everybody's like that, but my experience is basically most folk that are really, really great players are really nice people.
Are all right, yeah. Just before we go as well, because we're not the BBC, we can let you endorse a wee bit and mention you endorse Martin guitar.
I played Martin guitars for a long time, and I don't really have. I've got two guitars that are quite similar, and that's it. They're not complicated. They're not special models. There's nothing. It's just an off-the-shelf model. It just happens to be what I like to play. I'm not really a big. I mean, you probably see behind me. There's like over there or there. There's guitars and stuff, but that's because I'm actually starting to get some stuff now, because I've just played the same guitar for years. My electric guitar is actually about 30 years old, but I haven't changed equipment a lot. But I'm starting to work on, in the studio here, I'm starting to work on, well, you can't really see it, but here is like some newer effects that I'm starting to learn how to program and stuff. So it's a bit of a kind of steep learning curve for me. I've always just tried to get everything I can out of the guitar and not used any effects or anything to enhance it. And also I'm starting to play a bit more electric as well, because the project you saw there we'll probably, if we're out on the road with that, I'll probably do a bit of electric on it as well. I think getting my Telecaster twang back out. I think.
Brilliant. And then you work with AER, acoustic amps, and
AER, yeah. All just people that I've worked with for a long, long time. You know, they just make good stuff. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Good to give them a wee plug when we can, though.
I definitely.
Plectrums?
Vegan, that's with a W. So, and again, I never thought about guitar picks my entire life, ever. Just used the same basic ones. And I was in a dressing room in Europe somewhere on tour, and it was Tommy Emmanuel and Joshua Stefan, who's a great gypsy, he's a German gypsy guitar player, he's a great player, and someone else and me. And we were just jamming. Now, Tommy Emmanuel's guitar has got a really, really low action. It doesn't make a huge amount of sound acoustically. It's a brilliant sound that's plugged in. And him and Joshua just seemed to be effortlessly a lot louder than me. And I'm thinking, right. And so
you're like, wait a minute, I'm not having that. What's going on?
But I just said, you guys seem real, and they both went like that. It's these picks, and I went, shut up, it can't be the picks. So I borrowed the pick. In fact, there was a young guy, a student guy that was going to lessons with one of them, I think, and he gave me the pick. When I played, it did make a huge difference, and I would never ever have thought that would have happened, and I've used it ever since. They're a Dutch company. You can buy them online from them, I think, or I actually got mine in a piano shop in Cheltenham.
Right.
Yes, that's a fact. Because I was on tour and I looked at where you could buy them in the UK, and at the time, Cheltenham was one of the few places, probably more places now. And I was on tour and I was in Cheltenham and I was went to the shop and bought them, and that's it. And then I think I ordered 3 from the company after that. But yeah, it's not something I would like. If some students of that were saying to me about it, I would say go for a sort of heavier pick, something that doesn't bend easily. That'd just be the norm. But I would never ever have thought that something as simple as that would make a difference. But it did make a big difference.
There we go. So, any quick plans for the future? Is it all filling up again? Starting to get touring a bit again?
I think the kind of smaller venue thing's a bit slower than the bigger. Obviously, you look on telly, you see Glastonbury and Transmit, and you think, oh, it's back to normal. But the smaller gigs, I think, have taken a bit more of a hit. You know, because it's obviously it's not as easy for them to make money, if you know what I mean, because they're not going to sell it all the time and stuff. So I've got, I've done I did my residential workshop. It was fine. I did a couple of gigs. They were fine. And we're currently working on this project with the mandolin and the dobro to look at how we could do that. So looking at, maybe agents or bookers that would want to book that. Because obviously if he's coming from the States, then somebody needs to kind of organise all that side of it.
Yeah.
So we're looking into that just now. And like I say, that's the promo clip's going to be something like that. And then and then I'll just go back to doing solo stuff. I've got some stuff out in Europe after when's that? August, September time, I think. And then, so I think, well, my opinion will be probably next year before it seems to get a wee bit more back to normal, I think. And hopefully come back up to Shetland.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be good. And I'll organise some good weather for you.
Aye.
In fact, just leave it to the day and phone me and check before you come. And I'll say, no, I didn't come in the morning.
No, actually, it would be good to come up with that band with the.
Yeah, I think that band would go a storm up here. Actually,
aye. Well, I think what we'll probably do is once we get an idea of what's happening, if we've got a kind of window when we're going to do it, like I say, there'll probably be an agent that'll book it. I would just say to him, see if we can get something up in Shetland, because Even would love it. He's never been to Scotland, so he's up for it. But I mean, he's really busy in the States. So again, it's just that thing of getting it to work.
I'm sure he would like Shetland. I'm sure that would be. Listen, John, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been an utter pleasure gearing up your Sunday night to come and speak to us.
Great.
I knew it was going to be a pleasure because you're such a nice guy, and it's been great to have you on again. And we're going to finish off with a track with you guys again. This is the
Queen's Park Trot.
Queen's Park Trots. I didn't want to say we're going to finish off with the trots.
No.
That's what I was trying to avoid saying. But,
I should probably just say quickly, this was the theme tune to a comedy programme on TV called Dear Green Place.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Dear Green Place.
Cracking series.
Yes. So was the when they took a break from Still Game, the Still Game guys did Dear Green Place. So we did 2 series. I wrote all the music for it, including the theme tune.
Wow.
This is the theme tune.
Love it.
Fantastic. John, take care. All the best for the future.
Brilliant.
And thanks a million. Best of luck to you. Cheers, man. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers,
Bye.
John. All the best.
Absolutely superb.
As soon as that started again, it all came flooding back to me, that series.
Yeah, I know. John's just this amazing guy that he kind of just suddenly go, oh, and I wrote that thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
I was just looking on. I was just looking on IMDb under the Dear Green Place, and obviously John's mentioned as a composer, blah blah blah. But also, IMDb is very much a collaborative website, and there's been a request to collaborate for the Dear Green Place, and it says, "What is the Spanish language plot outline for Dear Green Place?" So somebody wants to know what it's about in Spanish.
Great. Put them
From
in
what I
touch with
remember. No hablo español. Nah, brilliant.
No, absolutely fantastic. What amazing guest. Brilliant. And what a nice guy. What a musician. What an absolute stellar musician.
Yeah.
And he's for Airdrie.
Exactly. Airdrie?
Airdrie.
Now, we were speaking earlier on, and I can confirm that Benedict Morris is from Airdrie, not anywhere else. He is from Airdrie.
Ah, there we go. So we've had two Airdrieonians on. We've had two Airdrieonians on the show. That's fantastic. So, brilliant. Ah, great. Fantastic. Really, really enjoyed that interview tonight. We've had the great Neil Sutcliffe and John Goldie. Absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait till John comes up to Shetland. I'm going to be there.
Of course, yeah. You live there.
Yeah. We'll get you up that weekend as well. I think you'd enjoy that one.
We could MC it.
Yeah,
we could MC the gig.
So you've been listen before we go and announce next week's guests as well. You've been pretty busy. You've been pretty busy because you've been working on your book again.
I have. I've been working on a new book, and it has been a labour of like in 2017 when we released the book Volume 1. I've been working on and off this book. Yeah. Right.
So this is the Argyll and Southern Highlanders pipe music collections, isn't it?
That's correct. Volume 2.
This is Volume 2. Right. So when's it coming out?
Volume 2 is available for pre-order now.
Right.
There is links on the Facebook page. And it is we're launching at Pipe and Live on the 11th of August, so a month tomorrow.
And what you told me earlier, 240 tunes.
240 tunes, yeah. There's 239 really good tunes, and then I've got one in it.
It's got there. It's standing up. But absolutely amazing an amazing bit of work for yourself to write out 240 tunes and put all the pipe notation into them, etc. There's a lot of work. That's a lot of notes.
We're hoping to live stream the launch.
Right.
And I will try and live stream it on our page as well as the Argyll's page. We have a couple of unknown players playing. We've got a guy called Stuart Liddell.
Oh,
don't think
yeah,
we've heard of
that's
him.
The boy. Is that the boy for Inveraray or something?
Yeah, there's a guy, Angus McCall.
Oh, Fred Morrison spoke about him.
That's him. A Willie McCallum.
Fred Morrison spoke about him as well.
Alistair Henderson.
Hold on, wait a minute. You're listing off some of the best pipers in the world here.
And we have Lorne Cousin playing at the launch. Lorne Cousin is from Campbelltown originally. His father was the vet in the area when I was living on that side. He was the piper at Madonna's wedding to Guy Ritchie, the one in Thumlin Castle. But he also toured with Madonna.
Oh, fantastic.
So my plan is to speak to Mr. Cousin and can I get him on the show at some point to chat about that. So that'd be great.
Well, listen, guys, we've went quite a bit over time tonight. We've done 2.25 hours, but it was well worth it because we've had two fantastic guests, Neil Sutcliffe and John Goldie. But we've got two cracking guests for you next week too, haven't we? And
they are, Peter.
On fiddle, originally from Inverness-shire, a champion winner. Played with the Oakbank Sound in his day, Mr. Gregor Borland. Gregor's an amazing fiddle player. And he plays bass now in bands and all sorts of things as well. A very talented musician. And we have the one and only, from the other side of the pond, from Canada, we have the famous composer, piper Michael Gray coming on.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward
That's
to that.
Going to be cracking.
Do we know where he's
I'm not exactly sure where he's coming from yet because sometimes they're travelling about doing contests and things.
Yes.
So, but we're working it out. But I didn't realise Michael was actually born in Quebec. He was brought up in Quebec and then moved over to Toronto and played a lot with the bands there and things.
Former
so I'm
Prime
really
Minister Toronto, please.
Toronto Police. Yeah. So really looking forward to getting a chat because he's written a lot of famous tunes. So that's next week's guest, fiddle player Gregor Borland and piper Michael Gray from Canada. And with that, I think we'll let you go to bed because I'm going to go and make a cup of tea, and then Space Grace, my wee girl Grace, starts Space Camp tomorrow again. From the Unsaxable Space Camp, she's working with Mike Mongo, Mike's actually going to be going up in space. He's been chosen as one of the guys to go up in the rocket this time. And Mason from Oklahoma, the two of them tomorrow. So it's going to be very spaced out. Did you see what I did
Grace,
there?
With Grace, the Space Cadet.
Yeah, Space Grace. So anyway, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching tonight and staying with us. And I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope you'll join us next week.
See you next week.
Take care. See you, Debbie. Cheers.